So we have now explored two radically different ways of thinking about the world, thinking about morality, and thinking about how to become a good human being. On the one hand, Mozi. On the other hand, Mencius, who, as we've seen, is calling back to Confucius's earlier vision and trying to rethink that vision in response to Mozi. Now I would like us to think about what this would mean for the way we live our lives. I mentioned in introducing Confucius a lot of the assumptions of the self that we tend to make, and now I'd like to do the same, referring to a lot of the assumptions about the world that we tend to make. So as I mentioned with Confucius, we like to claim that we have some true self within that if we look within and find, and always learn to love and embrace and be true to, that we can live life well and on our terms. And we mentioned Confucius's critique of that. Now let me follow to a second assumption we tend to make that I referred to briefly, but let's flesh it out a little bit more. Once we've found this true self we like to think, then we rationally try to find where that true self will fit within this world such that it can succeed. And we will do things like we will look at the world around us. We will think through, to give some very concrete examples, specific careers that work well for who we are, specific careers that don't. We aim ourselves at those careers, by definition, that will work well. And with our free will, we choose to dedicate ourselves to working hard at those things that will enable us to succeed in those careers that fit well with who we are. And if we do so, we like to think, by definition, because we're working hard at them, we will succeed. And if we do that, we will be, by definition, rewarded with getting more money, getting promotions, because we will have found the thing that is good for us, good for us as to who we are, and we have aimed our life accordingly. And when we tend to think about morality, I suspect it's along kind of comparable lines, right? What we want for a moral world would be one in which everything I just mentioned was the case. In other words, we want it to be a world where if I do everything I just mentioned, I will be rewarded, like I will succeed, because it will be a world in which people who try hard at what they're good at will be so rewarded. And we correctly get very angry when that doesn't happen. When I have found myself, I found a career I should be good at, I work hard in that career. If it doesn't work out, there's this sense of injustice, right? Like, how could this be the case? I know who I am, I found myself, I aimed myself correctly, it didn't work out. And even when we're thinking about other people, the sense is, of course, it doesn't always work out that way, but as long as it works out for most people, you'll create a world where most people will be rewarded for working hard, they will succeed, and we'd like to think, for the most part, those who aren't rewarded, who don't make it out, who don't make a lot of money, it's kind of their fault because they didn't work hard enough. In all of these ways, we're Moists, right? It's a stable world. We're stable people. We, if we work hard in this world, will be rewarded. And if enough of us do this, enough of us will continue to live properly in the stable world. And at some level, we kind of like to think, even if we don't admit it, that those who aren't being rewarded, it's kind of their fault. Not the fault of the world, because by definition, they just didn't work hard enough. And so it's a stable world. It's a stable world with clear rewards, clear punishments, and if you work hard within it, you will succeed. We're Moists. And note the implications of Mencius's way of thinking in contrast. Mencius will say not simply that that's wrong, it's dangerous. It's not just that the world doesn't always work this way. We can all find endless empirical examples that it doesn't. His point is, you shouldn't even be thinking of this. Like when Mozi says, tell yourself, believe that this is the case. Mencius would say, the reason you have to keep telling yourself you should believe it is because at some level you know it's not true, and in fact you should play out fully the implications of it not at all being true. Because if it's true, it means you're relying entirely on external guidelines, both to guide you in your behavior and to reward you for doing good behavior. When you say, I'm succeeding because I'm working hard, you may well be working hard, but note, the guidelines are external, the rewards are external, and it's not about an internal transformation. It's just about working hard in doing what you're being told to do externally. And for Mencius, by definition, if you're thinking of external guidelines, external rewards for working hard, you are ceasing to do what matters, you're ceasing to focus on what matters, and over time, you become inhuman. You simply will become this narcissistic thing focused on getting rewards, ceasing to care about the world around you. And for Mencius, if on the contrary, the world is, and we understand it is, fundamentally capricious, it means by definition, you cannot focus on those external guidelines because they're not stable, they're not clear-cut, they're even dangerous when we think they exist. And if Mencius is right on this, and he's right that we need to really truly understand this, then all we have, but for Confucian this is the key, is self-cultivation. Self-cultivation vis-a-vis everyone around us. Self-cultivation, returning to Mencius's terminology, of growing these sprouts, focusing on what it would mean to grow these sprouts at every moment of your lives, knowing you may not be rewarded in some external sense, but knowing also that by doing so, you can affect those around you for the better. You can help grow worlds where you and those around you can flourish. And if every one of us is doing this, then we truly can create great worlds. And the flip side of that is if we don't, we can become inhuman because it's up to us. There is no external force out there guaranteeing this will occur. If we don't overthrow that bad ruler continues. If that bad ruler continues for long enough that it destroys our entire culture of education and cultivation, we'll become inhuman. And for Mencius, this is entirely possible. Nothing guarantees that we can create worlds where we can flourish. But then, going from the negative to the positive, the flip side of that, of course, is if it's our responsibility to do so, then focus on that responsibility, and you can do so, and we can create worlds where humans can flourish. And let me focus on that last word for a moment. No part of the power here as well of Mencius. The Moist will tell you exactly what to do, right? It's not just that these external guidelines are external by definition, they're also obvious and clear-cut. Notice, Mencius by definition will not give you that, right? Like Confucius himself, he won't say, you must do X, Y, and Z to create a world where humans can flourish. Rather, the reason he wants to use these metaphors of organic growth is that what it's going to mean to grow your sprouts and create a world where other sprouts can grow as well, what will that mean in any situation? That's the point. There's no way to say in advance. All of this terminology is to get us to focus on something very concrete, and yet we have to sense what it will mean in any situation. And this is the challenge, I think, for us. If we tend to think in Moist ways, try, for a brief period of time at least, to think what it would mean to orient your life in a Mencius perspective. What it would mean to really focus your life on growing these sprouts within you by helping those around you to grow their sprouts. What it would mean to actually focus your life around that thinking of building worlds where we can flourish, and imagine the implications that would have for what you would be doing. And let me simply conclude by saying that, you will not be surprised to hear, will be our next exercise. Again, as I said with Confucius, you don't have to agree with Mencius, but I want you to take him seriously enough to think through concretely what you would begin to do, at first a very daily basis, if you were trying to put these ideas into practice, and what it would mean at a larger level for your life were you to begin more fully putting these ideas into practice. And even if you don't agree with him, even if your gut instinct is to say, but surely Moitze is right, let's at least allow these ideas to be taken seriously by trying to think through what it would mean. And as always, and Mencius would be the first to agree, the ideas will only work in practice if they're correct. And so begin putting this into practice. Begin as you go through the day, striving to sense the world around you, striving to see what you can do to help those around you without concern for external rewards, and see if you can feel the difference. I mean, using his metaphor, feel these sprouts begin to grow. And if you can, then you begin to do a little bit more of it, get better senses of how to help those around you. And if you can feel these sprouts grow, if you can feel this sense of morality growing within you, then clearly Mencius is onto something. And note, by doing so, you're focusing on cultivation. You're not focusing on it being a stable world. You're by implication assuming a capricious world, but also by implication assuming the level of responsibility that comes down to you in terms of what you do on literally a daily basis in your everyday life. Great, thank you so much.